Have you ever considered the weight of a single sentence? In the era we live in, our lives are etched in digital ink, permanent, cold, and sometimes lethal. We often think of killers as shadowy figures in dark alleys, but what if the killer is sitting in a sunlit bedroom, smiling at a smartphone? Welcome back to Story Jungle. I'm Nikki, and today we are dissecting a case that challenged the very definition of murder. It's a story about two teenagers, thousands of toxic messages, and a final, fatal command that echoed through a phone line. This is the autopsy of the Michelle Carter case, a chilling exploration of how words can become a noose. It began in 2012, under the bright sun of Florida. Two teenagers, Conrad Roy and Michelle Carter, met during a family vacation. But back in their homes in Massachusetts, miles apart, the relationship transformed into something far more sinister. In over 2 years, they only saw each other in person 5 times. 5 times. Think about that. Their entire universe existed within the glowing screens of their iPhones. They didn't share dinners, they shared vulnerabilities. Conrad was a brilliant boy, a licensed tugboat captain, but he was drowning in a sea of clinical depression. Michelle wasn't his lifeline, she became his mirror. She romanticized his pain, calling them a modern-day Romeo and Juliet. She didn't want him to get better. She wanted to be the only person he leaned on. She was writing the script for a tragedy, and Conrad was just a pawn in her play. The scariest part? It happened in plain sight. Conrad would be sitting at the dinner table with his family, eating, looking normal. But under the table, his phone was buzzing. While his mom was asking about his day, Michelle was in his ear, whispering darkness. She was isolating him. She convinced him that his family didn't understand him, that only she did. She built a wall around him so high that when he finally screamed for help, nobody could hear him but her. Michelle was hungry for sympathy. She realized that being the girl with the suicidal boyfriend gave her a power she never had, the power of being noticed. Weeks before the tragedy, she began a social rehearsal. She started texting her classmates, claiming Conrad was missing, that he had already killed himself, that she was broken. But he was still alive. She was testing out her mourning clothes while he was still breathing. When Conrad's depression made him hesitate, Michelle became his death coach. Look at the messages she sent. These weren't just words, they were psychological traps. She wrote, "You always say you're gonna do it, but you never do. I just want to make sure tonight is the real thing." Think about that phrase, the real thing, as if her boyfriend's death was just a project. When Conrad expressed fear, saying he didn't know why he was so upset, she didn't offer comfort. She pressured him. "I thought you wanted to do this. The time is right and you're ready. You just need to do it. If you don't do it now, you'll be miserable forever. You're finally going to be happy in heaven. No more pain." And eventually, she broke him. He stopped fighting. He started doubting. He simply obeyed. So, July 12th, 2014. The air is thick and silent. Conrad Roy drives his black Ford F-150 to a secluded corner of a Kmart parking lot. He starts the gasoline-powered water pump, and the cabin fills with carbon monoxide. But then, the most human thing happens. As the smoke rises and his vision blurs, Conrad realizes he doesn't want to die. He panics. He opens the door and stumbles out into the fresh night air. For life. His lungs are burning. His survival instinct is screaming. In that split second, the fog clears. He realizes he made a mistake. He's just a scared 18-year-old kid. He doesn't want to die anymore. He wants a way out. He wants to be saved. He calls Michelle. He reaches out for a reason to stay. And this, right here, is where the digital execution happens. Michelle Carter doesn't tell him to run. She doesn't call 911. She screams at him through the speaker. "Get back in, Conrad! Get back in!" She shamed him. She told him his family would deal with it. She talked him back into that cage of smoke as if she were talking him into a cold bath. For 45 minutes, she stayed on the line. Can you believe that? Let's talk about the 45 minutes that the world will never get back. While the gasoline engine was roaring in that truck and the toxic fumes were filling Conrad's lungs, there was a phone call active. For 45 minutes, Michelle Carter sat in the comfort of her home, listening. Imagine the sounds she heard. She listened to the engine hum. She listened to him struggle for oxygen. She listened to his nails scratching against the window as his lungs burned. And she didn't say a word. She waited for the silence. She knew the exact moment his heart stopped. The silence of the Kmart parking lot interrupted only by the mechanical hum of death. She didn't put the phone down. She didn't look away. She stayed present in his final moments, not as a lover, but as a spectator. This silence is the most haunting piece of evidence. It shows a level of calculation that is hard to process. It wasn't a moment of madness. It was a 45-minute commitment to someone else's destruction. Why didn't she hang up? Because she wanted to be sure. She wanted to hear the exact moment her performance as the grieving widow could begin. She knew he was dead. She had listened to his final breath. Yet, she started a manual of deception. She texted Conrad's mother, Lynn Roy, asking, "Have you heard from him? I'm so worried. He hasn't replied to me." Can you imagine the cold-blooded nature of that? She was comforting the mother of the boy she had just commanded to die. But to understand the crime, you have to look inside the girl. On the surface, blonde, bubbly, the girl next door. But underneath, she was starving. Literally. Michelle eating disorders, isolation, a mind clouded by a cocktail of antidepressants. She didn't just want a boyfriend, she wanted a story. She lived in a fantasy world, blurring the lines between real life and TV dramas. She convinced herself she was an angel of mercy, that she was saving Conrad from his pain. But the darker truth? She was addicted to the attention. She needed to be the grieving heroine in a tragedy of her own making. And Conrad was just the supporting actor who had to die for her show to begin. Michelle thought she was smart. Those frantic texts to Conrad's mother, just camouflage. To the world, she played the grieving girlfriend, and she played it perfectly. But behind the scenes, the police weren't buying it. They seized the phones. They started digging, not just into the messages she sent, but the ones she deleted. For months, there was silence. But piece by piece, a different picture emerged, a much darker one. This wasn't a tragedy. It was a script. And Michelle was the writer. So when the trial began, the air was heavy. The prosecution didn't just present a case. They dropped a bomb. They revealed the one thing that shattered Michelle's defense. The evidence they call the smoking gun. In court, the prosecution showed the smoking gun. Michelle had confessed to a friend in a text after the death. "His death is my fault. I could have stopped him. I was on the phone and he got out because he was scared, and I told him to get back in." This wasn't a girl trying to help. This was an admission of guilt. The courtroom then became a battlefield of morality versus law. Michelle's defense team argued she was involuntarily intoxicated by her own antidepressants, that the drugs had altered her brain. But why then did she delete all her text messages right before the police seized her phone? If she was innocent, why hide the evidence? Then came the most debated legal point in modern history. The judge focused on the failure to act. He ruled that by telling Conrad to get back in, Michelle created a life-threatening situation. The moment he stepped out of that truck, he was safe. She took that safety away with one sentence. In 2017, the judge found her guilty of involuntary manslaughter. He ruled that while it was Conrad's hand that turned the key, it was Michelle's voice that took away his will to live. The courtroom held its breath. Judge Moniz looked up. He didn't see a confused teenager. He saw a crime. When he finally said the word, guilty, the silence broke. Michelle Carter, who had been stone cold for months, finally collapsed. She sobbed. Her hands covered her face. The fantasy world she had built, it shattered right there on the wooden table. She wasn't the heroine of a tragedy anymore. She was a convict. But then came the sentence that divided the world. The prosecution wanted years. The defense wanted probation. The judge gave her 15 months. 15 months. To Conrad's family, it felt like an insult. To Michelle, it was a nightmare. But for the law, it was history. She walked out of prison in early 2020, but the world has not forgotten. This case proved that in the digital age, a text message can be just as deadly as a bullet. Beyond the courtroom, the Michelle Carter case sent shockwaves through the global legal system. It forced lawmakers to ask a terrifying question. In a world where we live through our screens, where does free speech end and manslaughter begin? This case birthed what many call Conrad's Law. Before this, in many places, encouraging someone to take their own life wasn't strictly illegal unless you physically helped them. But now, the precedent is set. In the eyes of the law, your words are no longer just air. They are actions. So I ask you, can words pull the trigger? Was Michelle Carter a calculated monster? Or was she a broken girl lost in her own digital delusions? Does 15 months in prison feel like justice to you? Or was the system too soft on a killer who used a smartphone instead of a knife? If you found this autopsy of the human soul chilling, don't forget to subscribe to Story Jungle and hit the bell icon. We dive deep into the world's most mysterious cases every week, and you don't want to be left in the dark. I'm Nikki. Thank you for listening. Stay vigilant, keep your secrets close, and sleep with one eye open. I'll see you in the next story.